At the dawn of the 20th century, the Lower East Side of New York City became a dynamic stage where Jewish immigrants intricately wove their cultural traditions with union activism. This fusion not only shaped their own community's identity, but also had profound impacts on the cultural adaptation and intercommunity relationships across burgeoning metropolis. The interactions between Jewish immigrants and other ethnic groups during this era exemplify a transformative period in urban history. Overall, it can be said that Jewish immigrants in the Lower East Side melded their cultural traditions and union activism with other ethnic groups, shaping cultural adaptation and intercommunity relationships in the early 20th century New York. The mass migration of Jews to America during the late 19th and early 20th centuries marked a transformative period characterized by intense social and economic changes. This wave, driven by the dual pull of better economic opportunities and the necessity to escape persecution and poverty in Eastern Europe. Upon their arrival, many Jewish immigrants settled in dense urban environments, such as New York's Lower East Side. This neighborhood became not only a melting pot of cultures, but also a hotbed of revolutionary ideas, including socialism and labor organization. In A Fire in Their Hearts, Yiddish Socialists in New York, Tony Michels explained that the early Jewish socialists, for the most part, advocated a certain kind of assimilation, which they called internationalism. They envisioned a working-class melting pot into which Jews and other immigrants would rapidly assimilate. These immigrants, confronted with grueling work conditions, low wages, and long hours in sweatshops, found a powerful voice in union activism. Unionism promised better working conditions and served as a platform for broader social changes, integrating economic struggles with cultural identity to foster unique community resilience. Fueled by their harsh economic realities and inspired by socialist ideologies that may have been exposed to back in Europe, Jewish immigrants on the Lower East Side became deeply involved in labor movements. The labor movement in America, though influenced by earlier European movements, adapted uniquely in the American context, where it became intertwined with the broader struggle for civil rights and worker protections. The establishment of the Bund in Lower East Side exemplified the confluence of cultural heritage and labor activism. While this movement was a direct transplant from the European Jewish labor movements, it morphed in the American setting into a broader social movement that not only pushed for economic reforms, but also for cultural recognitions and rights. Michels continued, "These intellectuals did not constitute a uniform group, divided as they were by gender, age, ideology, and other differences. Nonetheless, New York's radical Jewish intelligentsia formed a distinct subcommunity among the larger Jewish population by virtue of their common background, sense of purpose, and social function." Movements such as the Bund were spearheaded by both seasoned and emergent Jewish leaders, embedded socialist ideals within the fabric of Jewish communal life, and linked their struggles with those of other ethnic groups in the city. By the early 20th century, the Jewish labor movement had established itself as a force for economic betterment and as a critical player in the broader American labor movement. It influenced policies and labor laws that extended far beyond the Jewish community, advocating for justice and equitable treatment. This period also witnessed the rise of significant leaders and intellectuals who shaped the direction of this movement, emphasizing collective action and mutual support through unions like the United Hebrew Trades. Upon arriving in New York, Jewish immigrants were confronted with the challenge of preserving their rich cultural traditions while adapting to a new societal context. This delicate balance involved maintaining distinctive cultural identities and traditions, especially around food, which played a crucial role in their communal and religious lives. In Hungering for America, Italian, Irish, and Jewish foodways in the Age of Migration, Hasia Danner depicts food's integral relationship to culture. She writes, "Desperate with worry, a poor woman ran to the town rabbi, 2 freshly slaughtered geese tucked under her arms. She had planned to feed them to her family during the upcoming Passover week." This vivid description not only showcases the importance of food in Jewish culture, but also highlights the meticulous care with which food-related religious laws were observed, a practice that continued fervently in their new environment. As these immigrants settled in the bustling life of the Lower East Side, they found themselves in a melting pot where Americanization efforts were pervasive. The push for Americanization often clashed with immigrants' desire to retain their unique cultural identities. This tension was particularly evident in the way food was used as a tool for both preserving heritage and fostering assimilation. In her article, Restocking the Melting Pot, Americanization as a Cultural Imperialism, Geraldine Graver covers the concept of Americanization, or the subtle but forced assimilation of immigrants. According to Graver, Americanization manifested in many forms, such as lessons including advice on childcare and home maintenance, emphasizing practices unfamiliar or unnecessary in their native cultures. This type of instruction was not merely educational, but served a broader agenda of cultural transformation, subtly undermining immigrant customs and culinary practices. Americanization was, in part, an attempt to cleanse immigrants of their foreignness. Public school systems, local and federal social services, private industry and private charitable organizations offered in English, good citizenship, and American customs. These efforts reveal a deliberate campaign to mold immigrants and the American middle class, instilling Protestant, Anglo-Saxon ideologies. However, despite these pressures, Jewish immigrants actively found ways to integrate their traditions with the American landscape. Food continued to be a central element of their cultural expression. They adapted traditional dishes, integrated local ingredients, and maintained dietary laws, thereby preserving a sense of community and continuity amidst change. This can be viewed in many delis across the Lower East Side, including those with egg rolls, sushi, and pizza. This ongoing negotiation between maintaining traditional customs and adapting to new environments underscores the broader process of cultural adaptation. It reveals how Jewish immigrants did not merely absorb American culture, but actively participated in a dialogue that shaped their identity and influenced the cultural fabric of their new home. Interplay between cultural preservation and Americanization highlights a critical aspect of immigrant life in early 20th century New York. It illustrates how cultural traditions, especially those centered around food, served as both a bastion of identity and a bridge to new cultural expressions. In the early 20th century, Jewish immigrants also significantly shaped the labor movements and unions in New York, leveraging their involvement in socialist movements to champion workers' rights and broader social reforms. Their commitment to labor activism was deeply intertwined with their cultural identity, which was both a source of resilience and a platform for broader social engagement. Upon their arrival, Jewish immigrants quickly found themselves in the center of industrial America's most pressing labor disputes. As Tony Michaels highlights in this first chapter of his book, the year 1886 marked a significant turning point where thousands of Yiddish-speaking Jews participated in strikes, marching for the 8-hour workday, and supported Henry George's bid for mayor on the United Labor Party ticket. This active participation illustrates how Jewish immigrants were not only integrating into the American labor force, but were also crucial in shaping the labor movement itself. The formation of a distinct Yiddish public culture provided a robust foundation for these activities. In Chapter 2, speaking to Moshe, Michaels described how this culture nurtured a unique socialist ethos among Jewish workers, facilitating their engagement with broader labor movements. On any weekend, socialist intellectuals gave Yiddish lectures on myriad topics from science to literature to political theory. Dozens of workers' self-educated societies, political clubs, and mutual aid societies sprang up. As a number of Yiddish-speaking Jewish immigrants exponentially grew in the Lower East Side, so too did the spread of support for labor reform and socialism. This solidarity was crucial as it enabled Jewish socialists to align with other ethnic groups, fostering collective action that often led to significant labor victories. Moreover, the activism of Jewish immigrants extended into the political arena of Jewish nationalism, complicating their participation in American labor movements with international perspectives and strategies. As detailed in Chapter 3, The Politics of Yiddish Culture, Jewish socialists in New York navigated these complexities by advocating for both local labor rights and global socialist ideologies, which sometimes put them at odds with more moderate elements within the labor movements. By integrating their efforts with those of other ethnic groups, Jewish immigrants not only enriched the labor movement with their unique perspectives, but also helped to shape the strategies and objectives of labor activism in the early 20th century New York. This synthesis of cultural identity and labor activism illustrates a broader narrative of adaptation and influence, highlighting the transformative impact of Jewish immigrants on American social and labor histories. In the context of intercommunity relationships, Jewish immigrants in New York City played a crucial role in the women's suffrage movement, exemplifying collaborative efforts across different activists and ethnic groups. Eleanor Lerner's study, detailed in Jewish involvement in the New York City women's suffrage movement, highlights how the Jewish community significantly contributed to the suffrage victory in New York State, a key battleground for national suffrage efforts. Lerner notes that Jewish support for women's suffrage was robust, with Jewish election districts consistently showing strong pro-suffrage sentiment. For instance, in the 1915 and 1917 referendums, the Jewish community spanning economic levels and residing in areas like Harlem and the Lower East Side provided critical votes. In both elections, the largest, strongest, and most consistent support came from the Jewish community. This support was not only a reflection of their political alignment, but also a testament to their ability to integrate and collaborate with other communities, fostering a broad-based movement for change. Support for the suffrage movement was also provided indirectly through a Jewish community. Closely allied to the Socialist Party within the Jewish community were the garment trade unions, but the importance of these unions was less in the area of active campaign than in providing a structure by which that suffrage message could be sent. Needle trade unions provided a handy vehicle for Jewish feminists to reach voters and also for suffragists to contact large numbers of young, working Jewish women. This strategic use of existing social and labor networks allowed the suffrage movement to permeate through layers of the Jewish communities on the Lower East Side, enabling a deeper integration of suffrage ideals into the community's daily life and labor relations. This active and passive participation and support were instrumental in shifting this cultural dynamics on the Lower East Side, as Jewish immigrants not only voted but also engaged in organizing and campaigning, influencing both their Jewish community and their inter-community relationships, underscoring how Jewish immigrants melded their cultural traditions with civic activism, significantly shaping the cultural adaptation and community dynamics in early 20th century New York City. In assessing the broader cultural and social impact of collaborations and exchanges among Jewish immigrants and other communities in New York City, the intertwining of political, artistic, and economic struggles plays a pivotal role in shaping both identities and the urban community dynamics. One significant arena where Jewish contributions are evident is in the labor and political activism. As described in the 5th chapter of Deborah Moore's Jewish New York, the suffrage movement in New York saw active participation from Jewish women, particularly those involved in the labor sector. Jewish supporters of suffrage emphasized its link to labor. The manufacturer has the vote, the bosses have votes, the foremen have votes, the inspectors have votes. The working girl has no vote, Lemlich stressed. Jewish women worked alongside Jewish men in the garment industry as co-workers. Their presence pointed to shared concerns for better conditions in the shops and at home. The quote highlights how Jewish activism not only pushed for broader suffrage, but also sought to integrate these efforts with broader labor rights, thereby fostering a dual influence on both political enfranchisement and labor conditions. This cross-pollination of activism helped shape the political and social identities of New York's communities, embedding a culture of rights and representation in the city's fabric. Artistic contributions also played a crucial role in expressing and shaping the cultural identity of New York's Jewish community. Chapter 8 illustrates this impact through the revitalization of the Educational Alliance's art school. When the Educational Alliance restarted its art school, its new director, Abbo Ostrowski, inclined towards radical politics, not avant-garde art. A student is made to feel his identity with the community, of which he is a product, by drawing inspiration from its life, reflecting the peculiarities of its environment and embodying in permanent form its cultural heritage. This engagement with the arts was not merely about creating aesthetically pleasing works, but was deeply tied to reflecting and shaping the community's cultural experiences and struggles. Through art, Jewish New Yorkers could assert their identity, document their lived experiences, and influence the broader cultural narrative of the city. Political crises and leadership also highlight the Jewish community's broader social impact. The mayoralty of Abraham Beam during a time of fiscal crisis exemplifies this influence. Behind Cosell and Ford's injurious rhetoric lay a confluence of social, economic, and political crises that had brought the city to the brink. Jews did not win the mayoralty until the election of Abraham Beam. Beam's leadership during the tumultuous times was symbolic of the Jewish community's integration into the core political structures of New York, reflecting how Jewish Americans moved from the periphery to the center of political discourse and action in the city. This period marked a significant moment in the history of New York, showcasing how Jewish leadership attempted to navigate and mitigate complex crises that impacted all New Yorkers. Collectively, these elements, from labor activism and artistic contributions to political leadership, illustrate the profound impact Jewish communities have had on the cultural and social landscape of New York City. Each facet of their involvement has contributed to shaping a city that is deeply pluralistic and vibrantly democratic. By engaging in diverse sectors of city life, Jewish communities did not merely adapt to New York, they transformed it, fostering a dynamic interplay of cultural exchange and collaboration that continues to define the city's identity. Through their robust participation in union activism and their efforts to maintain cultural traditions, these immigrants did not just adapt to their new surroundings, they reshaped them. By forging alliances with other political bodies and contributing to the city's labor movements, they played a crucial role in shaping not only their own community's identity, but also the broader patterns of cultural adaptation and intercommunity relationships. This period of history illustrates a powerful example of how diverse groups can influence and redefine the cultural contours of the city, leading to a richer, more integrated urban fabric. The lasting impact of these actions continues to resonate, underscoring the dynamic and pluralistic nature of urban life in New York City.